Yo guys, welcome back to the channel. Now this is like kind of a part 2 of hero cars that are not in car films. Well, welcome to hero cars that are not in car TV shows. So for example, when I was a kid, some of my favorite TV shows were always about cars. Think about Knight Rider with Kit, or just about any car that you can think of that is memorable from Top Gear. That being said, there were a couple of TV shows when I was younger that I used to watch all the time where the hero had a car, but it wasn't necessarily a car show. And it was always really interesting to see what car the director would usually pick for the hero to drive. Some of them are ridiculously cool and some of them are just really understated. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. The first one is a 1973 Peugeot 504. Now, with every car that we go through, I want you guys to have a guess on what show you think this car showed up in. So again, you know, it might be tough for you guys to guess because you don't know what my favorite shows are, but it's a fun little mini game if you want to play along. The 1973 Peugeot 504. This is a pretty recent show. It's called Only Murders in the Building, and it is a car, probably the only car actually, that is driven by a main character. This one is driven by Oliver Putnam, which is the guy without the hat. It's the old guy without the hat, if you've never watched the show before. This show is based primarily in New York City, so most of the characters do not drive. They usually just run or walk or take a cab. But Oliver Putnam does have this really old Peugeot, and I thought it was a very quirky little choice from the director to have this car represent his character. I think they fit very well. They are, you know, classic, they are quirky, and a little bit different, right? You don't really see a lot of French cars, especially antique Peugeots in the US, or even in New York City for that matter, right? As opposed to maybe a muscle car, for example, if you're thinking of old cars in New York City. So I thought this was a very interesting take. We've seen it in a couple episodes when the characters needed to drive out of New York City, like to Long Island or Coney Islands or even Jersey. So that was pretty cool. So that's the first one. The next one that I do want to highlight is the Pontiac Fiero GT. Now this one I feel like some people might be able to guess. This was actually a pretty popular car. It was definitely not a car show by any means, but this was pretty big to the plot for one season, and that is How I Met Your Mother. This is Marshall's Pontiac. I think the backstory, you know, I've watched How I Met Your Mother like 5 or 6 times over and over, but I'm still a little bit rusty because it's been a couple of years since I watched the whole thing. If I remember correctly, this is Marshall's car. I think he bought it in college, and it's basically just a rust bucket. Like it breaks down all the time, and I think there was an episode on how I think him and Ted wanted to do one last road trip together, and I think there was a very interesting story where him and Ted, so two of the main characters from the show, they were actually stuck in a blizzard, if I remember correctly, in this car. It's also the birth of a very iconic scene in the show where they sing, I want to say the song is called 5,000 Miles, I'm pretty sure. Like, I want to walk 5,000 miles, 500 miles, that's right. So yeah, the Pontiac Fiero shows up, I think, a couple of times in the show, and definitely one to remember. All right, moving on. Oh yes, an honorary mention from How I Met Your Mother was the 2008 Volvo XC70. This one only showed up in season 4 in a couple of episodes, and it was driven by Dr. Stella, which was one of Ted's love interests at the time. And yeah, I just thought it was a very fitting car. The main character, Stella, again, this is a show that is based in New York City, but the main character, or at least the character that drives the Volvo, lives in Jersey, so it makes sense to why she would need a car. So that was pretty cool. All right, moving on to the next show that I want to do a highlight. This one's very interesting. The 2008 Scion XBRS. If you can guess what show I saw this on, I mean, 100 brownie points to you, because I don't think anyone's gonna get this one. And if you do, then, you know, we probably shared a very, very similar childhood. This was from iCarly. And it was not even seen in many episodes. This was seen in their first kind of TV movie series, the I Go to Japan. It's basically the cast, they go to Japan for some kind of like video competition, video award show or something like that. And yeah, this is the car that is shown pretty often. The antagonists of the episode drive the Scion, and they basically drive... I mean, do you guys want spoilers? You want spoilers for this or not? Spoiler warning, I guess. You know, if you ever want to watch iCarly, I Go to Japan. But basically what happens here is that the main characters are kidnapped. And the antagonists drive them just in the middle of nowhere in their little Scion, so that was kind of interesting. Anyway, it's a very, very quirky car. You know, and the funniest thing about it is this is actually a left-hand drive Scion. It's based in Japan. The cars in Japan are right-hand drive, but here we go with, you know, a left-hand drive Japanese cars. Honestly, I don't even know if Scions are even sold in Japan. I'm pretty sure they were based for the Western market, right? So that makes it even more interesting that of all cars, they chose this. But anyway, moving on to the next show. This is indeed a 1988 Land Cruiser. I forgot what the generation is called. I think it's like J20 or something like that. Now, this car is, in my opinion, synonymous with the show, but it's not really synonymous with any particular character from the show. So, you know, if you want to call this a hero car, you can, but what I will say is that this is a car that is synonymous with the show. You will see it almost every episode, but you won't see the same one, right? You won't see the same one. Some are in a police livery, and some are just regular Land Cruisers, but you see it in almost every episode, and I'm talking about Narcos. So this Land Cruiser, I mean, you see it in so many different variations. It's driven by the antagonist, it's driven by the protagonist, is driven by the police, everything, you know? There are multiple Toyota Land Cruisers. Honestly, I could do an entire episode on the cars of Narcos itself, because primarily Narcos isn't really a car show. It's a show about drugs, right? And the car choices in this show is honestly immaculate. Like, a lot of classic Mercs are in here as well, like the W123. I think there's like a W126 in there as well. Some really cool cars. There's one scene with like a Dodge Coronet. I think the Dodge Demon is in this as well. Some really cool cars, but one that shows up all the time, I would say, is the Land Cruiser. If I could think of any other car, it would probably be the Jeep Cherokee, because the Jeep Cherokee is what the protagonist of the movie drives. Not the movie, but of the show drives. But I just feel like the Land Cruiser shows up that much more. All right, moving on to the next car. Okay, this one we get interesting here. 1973 Dodge Charger. This is one of my favorite TV shows that isn't about a car, I guess, or that isn't Star Wars. My favorite TV show of all time is probably Star Wars: The Clone Wars. That's not going to be in today's video because there aren't any cars in that. And also some of my favorite TV shows, you know, include Knight Rider. That's a primarily car show, so that's not included. Top Gear as well. Obviously, that's an automotive show. But this one I would say is probably one of my favorite TV shows that actually isn't a car show. But this definitely is the hero's car. It shows up a couple of times, it gets blown up, and it comes back again. And I think it's a very unique choice because, you know, when you think of a black Charger, you always think of the Fast and Furious franchise with a 1970 Charger, but you don't usually think of a 1973 Charger. And I thought that this was a very unique choice to have a 73 Charger being the hero car in this particular show. One of my favorite ones is Burn Notice. If you've never watched Burn Notice before, I would highly recommend it. From all of the shows that you see here, I would probably recommend Burn Notice the joint most. I mean, dude, honestly, these are some of my favorite shows, right? I love Narcos. A couple other shows coming up that I love. How I Met Your Mother is a great one as well, but that one I think is a little bit more subjective. I feel like if you like Friends, you're probably not gonna like How I Met Your Mother, at least. And those are the experiences that I have met with people. You know, usually they like Friends, and then they tell me that How I Met Your Mother is just not as good. Well, it is what it is. I grew up with How I Met Your Mother, so. Anyway, moving on. Burn Notice. Yes, one of my favorite shows. This is Michael Weston's car. And yeah, there are a bunch of scenes where this shows up. A bunch of car chases that it's in. Again, it's not primarily a car show, but I would say that the 73 Charger does play a massive impact. Again, Burn Notice, kind of like Narcos, is one of those shows where cars do play an integral part, as in you see a car in every episode, but it isn't a car show, but they're used as props, I guess, for car chases, for traps, or just to introduce a character of a high status. But there's no car in the show that does it any better than the 73 Charger. All right, moving on now. We have the Jaguar. I believe this is the XJ long wheelbase, XJ-L. This is a car that is synonymous with Sherlock, in my opinion. I feel like some people might disagree. Some people might think about a different car, and I will talk about that later on as well. But for me, this is the most consistent car in the TV series because this is the car that is owned by one of the main characters. Not Sherlock himself, but one of the main characters. So whenever you see this person, there's a high chance that you will see this car. He doesn't drive it, but he is driven in it. And I do think that this is the hero car of Sherlock. I know that there is a more literal hero car, but that car only shows up in, I think, 1 or 2 episodes. This one shows up consistently across the 3 seasons of the show. This is one of those shows where I watched with my girlfriend quite recently, I think about a year ago. So the memory is still relatively fresh in my mind compared to some of the other shows that we see over here. But the other car that I do want to highlight is, of course, the V8 Aston Martin Vantage. This was, I guess, the literal hero car of the show because this car had basically one scene, and it basically, I think it saved the life of a character or something like that. So yes, hero car, very fast, one scene, but the Jaguar was consistent. You saw it in every season. It was associated to one character, and it was a good character. It was a good guy too. So you know, I think that this was the hero car. This is the one that thinks, you know, that solidifies itself in my mind. Like when I think of a car from Sherlock, I think of Jaguar first. I think of the Aston Martin later on. All right, I believe this is the last one. So this is the last one we're talking about. It is the W210 Mercedes-Benz E-Class or E230. I mean, if you want to be very specific about it, it's on W210, it's an S210, but I digress. It's from that generation of Mercedes E-Class, and this is the car that I think is the biggest hero car of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Again, Brooklyn Nine-Nine is known for having multiple cars. It's not a car show, but in the first season, Jake's Ford Mustang is relatively important, and I believe in the later seasons, Captain Holt has a Chevrolet Corvair, which is also pretty integral to a couple of episodes. But I don't think anything is more synonymous to the show than the S210. And the reason why I say this is because you see it in almost every single episode. You see the Mercedes in just one scene, in this scene. Every time, okay? Not every single episode, but I would say 50% of the time when there is a scene at the precinct, they will give you, I think, one of 2 videos. They'll give you one of 2 shots of the building outside. One of it doesn't have the Mercedes, and the other one has the Mercedes going by. So every time you get this scene, and this is a scene that is around from, I'm pretty sure, the first season all the way to the final season, every time there's a scene at the precinct, there's about a 50% chance that you get this scene. And whenever you get this scene, you will always see the Mercedes W210 front and center. And, you know, me being a Mercedes fan, it's really hard to not notice. I guess you can say that you see every car in this scene in just about half of the episodes in the entire show. So you can say the same for the Toyota Camry, or even like the Ford Fusion, or even that what's that Toyota in the background? Is that not a 4Runner? I think that's a RAV4. No, I don't know the brand. And or even the Chevy Impala, right? Or even the Lincoln Town Car, or the Ford Explorer. Like every car that you see here, right, shows up more often than Jake's Ford Mustang, or even Captain Holt's Chevy Corvair, right? But like I said, front and center, it's the Mercedes S210, right? So in my opinion, that is going to be the car of the show. But anyway, guys, that's going to be it for today. Let me know down in the comments below, what TV shows did you watch back in the day, and what was a car that stood out? Again, the only caveat is that it cannot be a car show. So no Top Gear, no Knight Rider, none of that, okay? Anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. I'm gonna stay safe, wash your hands, and blossom out. Peace.